Hi. Today let's look at an exponent problem. You'll find a lot of these on both the SAT and the ACT. Let's see what this one has to say here. It says if 2 to the x plus 2 to the x plus 2 to the x plus 2 to the x is 8 to the x minus 2, what is the value of x? So I'm going to let you think about it for a few minutes, try to solve it, pause the video, and then we'll come back and solve it together. Alright, so let's see what we got here. This would be considered quite a difficult question. I think we've got a couple things here that will give kids some pause. First of all, we're adding with exponents, which is always a little bit of a tricky proposition. And what they've done here is they've made the base numerical and the exponent itself a variable, right? Typically we're used to seeing it like that as opposed to like that. So let's try and make some sense of this. Just want to be a little bit careful when you try to add. I think one of the things that, here's the most common mistake that you'll see just incessantly, is if I take 2 to the x plus 2 to the x plus 2 to the x plus 2 to the x, people are going to say, well, isn't that just 8 to the x? No good. Rule 1, and this is the most important rule with exponents, if you remember nothing else, always remember this. Once the bases are the same, and they must be the same to proceed, they never change. They will never change when you add, when you subtract, when you divide, when you multiply. They will always remain the same. So what we want to try to do first is try to get all the bases the same. I mean, we can see we have all 2's over here. Next thing I'd want to do is try to change the 8. So what I'm going to do, I'll just write the left side here. 2 to the x plus 2 to the x plus 2 to the x plus 2 to the x. And I'm not going to multiply, I'm not going to divide by anything to change the 8. What I'm going to ask myself is, I have my base 2. I always like to change the bases lower. 2 to what power is 8? I think a lot of kids would know pretty quickly that 2 to the third is 8. So now this and this are exactly the same thing. Now all I have to do is take that x minus 2 that's sort of sitting out in space and just attach it to my new exponent. So now I'm looking at that. And I can probably clean that up a little bit. I can distribute the 3, and I'll get what? 2 to the 3x minus 6. But now you have to be careful here, because when you're adding, really probably the easiest way for most people to do this is to try to change the addition into multiplication. And by that I mean you would ask yourself, well, how many of these things do I have? And you can see pretty clearly you have 4 of them. So if I do that, I can write it like that. But now all of a sudden we're back to square one, where we have a base 2, we have a base 2, but now we have a base 4. So now what could I do? I'm always looking to change the bases lower. If I look at the 4, I'm just going to change that into base 2, which is what? 4 is 2 squared. So now I have this. 2 squared times 2 to the x is equal to 2 to the 3x minus 6. So now we're getting pretty warm. We've got all the bases the same. We've got it into multiplication, which is a lot easier to deal with than the addition. And now what do we do when all the bases are the same and we multiply? I think everyone should know that. We just add the exponents, right? For example, if it's x to the 4th times x to the 3rd, the x stays the same. I add the 4 and the 3, and I get a 7. This is absolutely no different. It should just tell us that this plus this is that, right? So 2 plus x is 3x minus 6. Now we just have some simple algebra left. I'll move the 6 this way. I'll subtract the x that way. We can all pretty much do that and get x equals 4, and that's one way to do it. I think for a lot of kids, listen, if it's multiple choice and they give you 5 options, there's no harm in just popping the answers back in, checking them in your calculator. That's always one way to do that. The problem is you might see this on an SAT in the section where they don't provide you with the answer. So we definitely want to be, well aware on how to do this. Difficult problem. Just remember, get those bases the same and go from there.